Muted.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the focus of this afternoon's training is going to be supervisors using the web. So as you can see, I have our web portal already loaded up onto our screen. This is the new login screen for the newest version of the web. This will most likely look different than the web login screen that anybody else in this chat may have access to currently. This is brand new. We're going to be releasing it very shortly. You can keep an eye out for the blast email that will be coming with details on getting the newest version. Before we talk about signing in, over here on the right-hand side will be an area that VCS can use to notify you of information about upcoming events, maybe new features, new items that are available. Or in this case, we have information about our user conference. So we'll be changing this with different information as things occur. This is a clickable link that you can open up. And in this case here, it brings you right to the page for our user conference scheduled for September. And I'll just take a quick moment to mention that, as it says here, it's September 20th and 21st at Harrah's in Atlantic City. We're very excited. The staff is working very hard to put together an exciting event. We have a number of different things that will be covered, different training courses and so on. We also have a number of speakers that are coming to speak on different topics. It's also a chance to interact with other users of the software. And the reason I'm mentioning it is that we are currently at the tail end of our introductory price. So if you're thinking about coming, you might want to try to get that confirmed by January 31st, because as you can see here, the price goes up on February 1st. If you're looking to come, you want to be paid in full by January 31st to get that rate. You can register right online. You can always reach out to myself or to Jen for more information if you need to. And if you are going to come out, or if you're looking into it, and there's a spot there to ask who told you about the event, if you wouldn't mind putting Rob in there, I'd greatly appreciate it. You can get to this information even if you don't have our newest version. The web address is evolutionexchange.com, and I'm sure you've seen the emails coming from Jen and client care about this as well. Okay, and back to our login screen here. So on the left-hand side is where we're going to enter our username and our password to log into our system here. And this is the new look of the web page. If you're familiar with the Schedule Lab version of the desktop application, you'll notice it looks kind of similar to that, where we have our menu items here and we have a sidebar that will change with different options as we go along. Again, we're focusing this afternoon on supervisor training. So we're not going to cover too much of the like day-to-day employee items, like things that would be found in the employee section here. We're going to focus more on the supervisory items. So we'll start off with the schedule views, and we'll talk a little bit about what a supervisor has access to in way of schedule views on the web. All those items can be found here under the View Schedule menu. Okay, first one up, I'll talk about the daily schedule, which is the view that I am currently looking at here. Daily schedule, each page consists of up to 6 blocks, each block representing a different shift. In this case here, our shifts are called Squad 1, Squad 2, Squad 3, Squad 4, Squad 5, and Detective Bureau. We do have the ability to minimize our toolbar here. If you don't want to have this sidebar present, you can click these 3 lines here. That'll minimize that, and you'll be able to get a little more of your screen up at one time. In each of our blocks here, we have a list of names of people who are scheduled to be working that day and that shift. To the left, we have a spot where we would have a person's job assignment. And to the right, we have a section for details. That could indicate if somebody was on time off, if they were on overtime. Could also be used to show any scheduled details that might be assigned to an employee, or if there were any comments added to the schedule next to that person, it would show in that area as well. This is going to default to whatever the current day's date is. If you want to change the date, we have a series of buttons here. We have single arrows that'll go to the next day or to the previous day. We have double arrows that'll go to the next week or the previous week. And we have this button here that will bring us back to today's date. Over here, we have some buttons that will allow us to turn the page on our profile that we're viewing. So this profile has a second page with some additional items. I can click this button to go to the next page. And in this case here, we have administration, crossing guards, AM, and PM. I can use this arrow to go back, or the home button will always bring us back to the first page of this profile. And I can choose from other profiles that might have been created up at the top here. If I wanted to look at the records unit, I could open up that profile and see those items there. Okay. That is our daily schedule. Next one that I'll show you is our weekly schedule. This schedule is set up by group. Okay, so I'm part of Platoon B, Squad 1. So that's the group that loads up first. And I see a list of people who are part of that group. I see when they're working, when they're off. And I can see any time off entries that are in the system as well. I can always use this group dropdown if I want to look at the schedule for a different group, say Platoon A, Squad 1, and I hit refresh, and that will show the schedule for that group for that week. And we have a monthly schedule that works in a very similar fashion. So again, it's by group. Loads up my group first. Here's everybody who's in the group. I can see when they're working, when they're off. I can see time off entries starting to populate here. And again, I always have the option to choose another group to look at and see their schedule for the month. Okay, so that's our daily, our weekly, and our monthly schedules. All of those views show us multiple people at a time. Our calendar views show us a single person at a time. So if I go to the monthly calendar, I see the calendar for me for this month. When I'm working, when I'm off, time off, and overtime entries will start to populate here. It's going to load up to the current month by default, but I have arrows here that'll let me go to the next month or the previous month. This month will always bring me back to the current month. And I also have a drop down where I can select a month and jump right to that schedule. Depending on how your security is set, you may be able to choose to view other people's monthly schedules, or monthly calendars, I should say. We also have a yearly calendar. And again, that's going to show me my calendar for a year at a time. So here's the calendar for this year. When I'm working, when I'm off, my time off and my overtime will all start to show in here. Yearly calendar, you can only view your own. There's no option to choose to view someone else's. Okay, so those are the different views that we have available through the web. And we'll pause here real quick. We'll unmute the mics. Does anybody have any questions about viewing the schedule on the web? Any of those options, daily, weekly, monthly, or the monthly calendar or the yearly calendar? Okay, very good. I'm going to go ahead and mute the mics again. And we'll move on to the next section we're going to talk about, which is time off. How do I deal with time off entries as a supervisor? Okay. If I'm in the daily schedule and I see that there's a day off entry and I want to go in and approve or deny that day off entry, I can click on the entry. Oops. 1 second, I see a question coming on the chat. Are supervisors able to view other users' schedules from the web? That's all based on security. Yes, they certainly can. On the daily, the weekly, monthly schedules, and the monthly calendar, people can be given access to view other employees' schedules. Usually in a supervisory setup, we do give them access to do that as they would need to for certain scheduling purposes. Okay, so if I have a day off entry, I can go right to that entry on the schedule. I can click on it. And we're going to get first of all, we're going to go to a single shift view. We're going to zoom in on that shift. And we're going to get some options here in our sidebar. So the person I clicked on was Jeffrey. And here are some options of things I can do with Jeffrey. Now, one of them is change time off. I can take that request that Jeffrey sent and I can make a change to it. Click change time off. Here's the initial request that was sent in. And I can make any changes that I might need to this entry. I can change the reason. Maybe I need to change that. Or if I'm just going to go ahead and approve or deny that day, I can go here and adjust the button to change it from request to approve. I have the option to enter a reason text if I like as well. And there's some things here in advanced options that are sometimes used. They're kind of minimized there, but they are still available. Things like clearing assignments. By default, we're going to send the emails to the employee or employees that have been designated as the default recipients for this person's approvals. So I can just come in here, I can change it from request to approve, and I can click save. Okay, that's going to send my emails out in the background. And if we return back to our daily schedule here, we can see that our vacation has changed from blue to green, and the question mark has gone away. That's showing us that it is no longer a requested vacation day. It is now approved. if I have maybe a number of time off requests in the system and I don't want to go day by day and approve them all, I do have an option under the Supervisor section to manage time off. And this is just like the Manage Time Off screen that we have in the desktop application. It lets us set a date range. And then we have the option to filter by some items here, like filter by a certain employee, or by reason, or by group. And by status, too. Do I want to see all time off items, or maybe just the requests? And once I've got those set, I can hit search, and that will look for any items that match that criteria. So it found one request in the system. From here, I can I can look at the information. I can go down one by one and change the status from request to approve or deny. Or if I have a number of items here and I want to change them all to a certain status, I can use these global change buttons here, and I can make them all approved or all denied. Nothing actually takes effect until you click Save. So you can click these buttons and make these changes here all you want. As long as you don't hit Save, it will not become official. So if you make a mistake, that's okay. When you are ready to save the changes you made, you'll just go here, you'll hit Save. And that entry disappears now because it no longer meets the criteria of being a request. It's now an approved day off. So it would be found here now instead. Okay. So those are two different ways that you can approve a day off entry, either by going to the schedule and clicking on it and using the change time off option, or by going in the supervisor zone and using manage time off. Now, it's possible that you may need to put a time off entry in for someone. As a supervisor, you might receive a call or something like that for someone who won't be able to make it in but can put in an entry for themselves. You can click on a person's name, and you can go to request time off. And that'll let you fill out the entry for them. So Jake's name loads right up. The date loads up. The shift. If he's going to be out for the whole day or a part of the day, I can choose that. And I can choose what type of time it is that he's going to use. As a supervisor, I can skip the request phase and I can just make it approved because I've already identified that he's going to be out and I've already approved it. And then I can hit save. And that will put that person on a day off. If you don't want to go and find the shift or find the day that you're going to put the person off on, you can always go through the Supervisor menu as well to schedule time off. It's the same screen. You would just go along, pick the person's name, choose the date or date range, fill all that same information out, and hit save. But that might be easier, if it's something that you're putting somebody off for next month. Instead of changing the schedule, you can just go in here and pick the dates. Okay, the last thing with time off is I can go in on the daily schedule and I can remove time off as well. So if this person was supposed to be on vacation today and they change their mind, I can click on the entry. And I have the option here for delete time off. And it'll ask, are you sure you want to remove this time off record? And if I am, I can click remove. And that'll take that day off entry off of the schedule. Okay, so those are the different options, the different scenarios for a supervisor dealing with time off, either taking a request and changing it to be approved or denied, entering time off for someone who maybe can't for some reason, and then finally deleting time off from the schedule that maybe is no longer going to be used. Okay, so I'll go ahead and open up the mics. And the mics are live. Does anybody have any questions about time off from a supervisor's perspective?
Yes. Who exactly gets an email when a time off is approved? Just the employee and the supervisor?
So that is set up in a section on the main program. I'll show you briefly. Let's see. So from your main program, under Administration and List Center, there's an item here called Set Up Groups.
Oh, okay.
And our emails are based on our groups. So people from Platoon A, Squad 1, if we go to the tab here for email destination, we can say, when a request comes in, who gets it? Well, okay, maybe this is the sergeant for that group, so he gets the requests. But maybe we also want the employee to get a copy of that email as like a receipt.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the rest of the way, we might say, just notify the employee.
Okay.
This is kind of our most common setup. You certainly can add more people to these, but okay, that depends on how many people you want to receive email. But this right now means that, whoever this email person was, maybe the sergeant gets the request email, and okay, the employee who the day off is for gets an email every step of the way.
Okay. Thank you.
And overtime uses that same setup, so they get the same emails for overtime as well.
Thanks.
No problem. Okay. Any other time off questions? Okay, I'll go ahead and mute the microphones again. And we'll start with our next topic, which will be overtime. Okay, so our options for overtime are going to mirror or mimic our options for time off. So again, if I have a request that came in, my first option for approving that overtime is to go to the day. I see it right here with the question mark showing me it's requested. I can click on it. And in the sidebar, I now have an option for change overtime. This loads up all the information that was submitted in the request. And again, I can change any information here. I can adjust the reason, pay type, hours, or maybe I am simply coming in to approve this day off. I'm sorry, this overtime, my mistake. Again, I can enter something in the reason text if I like. And we have some advanced options here for stuff like job, CFS number, reference number, and so on. But those are all optional items. They're not required. So if everything looks good here, I just go ahead and change it to be approved, and I click Save. And that will send out my emails. Again, using those default setup that we just looked at a moment ago. And we see that it has changed now. The question mark is gone. It is no longer a requested overtime. It's now been approved. Okay, that's one way to approve an overtime request. Another option, which might be useful if I have a number of overtimes that I want to approve, is in the Supervisor menu. And we have Manage Overtime, just like we had Manage Time Off. And the screen is pretty much identical. I set my date range on what period of time I want to look for items. I can narrow my results down. I can filter by employee, by reason, and or by group, and by status as well. So let's see if we have any requests out there that need to be addressed. And it looks like we don't. So there's nothing out there that hasn't already been approved. If I run this for approved items, we do have a handful of items in there. Okay, this screen has the same options as Manage Time Off. I can go one at a time and change an entry. or I can use these buttons up here to make global changes. I can make everything be denied or approved. Again, nothing takes effect, nothing is permanent until you hit the save button. So if you make a mistake here, that's okay. You can always just leave the screen or hit the search button to bring back the information the way it was. But if you are ready to change the status of something, you can go ahead, set it up, and click Save. Okay, so that's manage overtime. Another way that you can approve overtime entries. Now, again, it could be possible that you need to enter an overtime on the schedule for someone. For some reason, maybe they can't put it in themselves, or maybe you're scheduling this overtime for them. You just need somebody to work, and without going through a call list or posting it, you just have to assign someone to an overtime. Okay. I can either click on the schedule somewhere and use schedule overtime, or I have the same option available to me in the Supervisor menu, schedule overtime. Either way, we're going to get this same screen here. So in this case, let's say that I needed Kimberly to stay an hour for some reason. So I have her name and date and shift here already set up based on the fact that I clicked on her name. And I could say I needed her to work late. She's going to get paid in cash. And I can enter the times of the overtime. So let's say I needed to stay from 19 to 20. Again, as a supervisor, I can bypass the request phase and just make it approved. Reason text is an optional screen. If I want to put something in there, I can. And again, our advanced options, if I need to put in a job assignment, a CFS number, a reference number, anything along those lines. And when I have it completed, I just hit save. And that will add that overtime to the schedule. Okay. The final item with overtime is going to be deleting an entry. So if we put this in here, and it turns out that we no longer needed this person to stay late, or they weren't going to work the overtime, or maybe it was a mistake or it was inaccurate, I can click on the item, and I can do delete overtime. Are you sure you want to remove this overtime entry? We'll say yes, remove it. And that will be taken off of the schedule. Okay, so those are our options for dealing with overtime. We can approve a request that comes in, or we can just manually assign overtime to someone. And we have the ability to edit an overtime entry or delete it altogether. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute the mics. And mics are live if anybody has any questions about handling overtime as a supervisor. Tom, I see you have your hand raised there.
Yeah, Rob, are you going over anything with OIC pay coming up here, or, because it kind of has to do with overtime? Our issue that we just had was that we couldn't put guys in for OIC pay during the hours that they were working. Is that fixed on the web portal now or no?
So you were using an overtime code for your OIC pay?
Yes.
So obviously you were trying to put it in for the same time that the employee was working. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Let me make a quick note and I'll look into it for you and I can get back to you.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
No problem. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions concerning overtime? Okay. If not, I'm going to go ahead and mute the microphones again. And we'll move on to our next topic, which is going to be open shifts. And we're going to look at entering an open shift on the web, and then also awarding an open shift on the web. Okay, so both of these items can be found under the Supervisor menu. The first one we're going to look at is Add, Update Open Shifts. Okay, so we can go into this screen here to create an open shift right from the web. Okay, so to create a new one, I can come in here. If I already have information here, I can clear it out by pressing New. And I'm going to start filling in items. The things labeled in red, of course, are required fields. So first thing is, what shift is this overtime for? So we're going to post an open shift for, let's say, squad 3. And what type of employee do we need? What skill do they need to have? We can choose from anything that we have created in our system. In this case, I'll make it patrol. And then we have date. What day or date range do we need people to fill this open shift? So I'll put mine for the 30th. And then we have our from time and our to time. Okay, so we can identify, is it the whole shift or is it just part of the shift? In this case here, we'll say it's 1100 to 2300, the whole shift. Okay, we have some other sections here that are not required. I could choose a job to go with that open shift, a job assignment. I can enter a CFS or reference number if I want to. I do have to choose a reason code. This will identify what type of overtime will it create when we assign someone to this open shift. So maybe it's a special event. And then reason text is optional. I can put something in there if I want. This checkbox gives me the option to only allow part-timers to sign up for these open shifts, the open shift that I'm creating. Some departments might use this as an aid in scheduling part-timers. They may just post some openings and let people sign up for them. And that lets them narrow down who can sign up to just people who are marked in their employee profile as a part-timer. Or if we just want to give part-timers maybe a first crack at working these openings, we can always do that, and then maybe open it up later to more people if we don't get it filled using part-timers. Of course, that is an optional field, not required. You don't have to use that. Next thing we have is our spaces where we identify what days of the week in this date range we need people and how many we need. Okay, so we just have this set up for one day, Saturday, and we can say that we need 2 people that day. Okay. At the bottom, before I hit save, I just want to point out a new feature that we have here to give you the option to send notification out about this newly posted open shift. So if we're interested in sending out notification, you just put a check in that box there before you hit save. And then we're going to click save. Because I clicked send notification, I get this screen that shows up here where I can choose what employees I want to send notification to. I can select all employees, I can select none, I can manually check people off, but I can also sort and filter by these columns here. So for example, if I want to send it to all of our police officers, I can put that in there and that will filter everybody who doesn't have PO in their title. And now maybe I want to go ahead and mark everybody that's left here, all of our police officers. So you can do that with title or with group. And you can even do it twice. I might want all of my police officers and all of my sergeants. So I can bring them up, and I can select all of those employees. And now when I clear out my filter there, you'll see that our police officers are still marked along with our sergeants. Okay, so you'll see this. This is the new screen on the web that we use to select employees, especially for emailing and things like that. When I'm all set, I just go down here and I click OK. So now all those people would get an email letting them know that there was an open shift available on that date and that time and so on. So if you're a department that uses open shifts, that might be something that is helpful for you. All right, so we'll close out of there. And we've now successfully created our open shift. Down here at the bottom of the screen, I can open up this drop-down and I can see existing open shifts, including the one that I just created. I can click on an open shift down here and I can make changes to it. Maybe I found out that we need more people now, so I can up the number of people we need or change the hours. Or I can also delete it if we no longer need that open shift. Okay, I'll delete this one here. All right. So that'll get removed from our list there. I think I have to select this again in order to refresh it. So the one from 2.5 is now gone. Okay, so that's how we can go in and we can create new open shifts or edit existing ones right from the web. Okay, the other part of open shifts is going to be awarding these open shifts. So if you don't have it set so that way your open shifts are automatically awarded to the first person that signs up, then you can award them by going to Award Open Shifts. I come in here and I can see a list of open shifts that are out there. And if I click on them, I will see the names of people who signed up for them down here. Not sure if I have any that have been signed up for. So what I'll do is I'll go in, I'll sign up for one real quick. I'll go back into the employee section and go to open shifts. And I'll find one that I want to sign up for here. Click on it and click Save. So I've now requested that one. And we can go back to the Supervisor section and back to Award Open Shifts. Now if I click on that one, I can see a list of anybody who has signed up for that open shift. And I can choose their name from the list. And then I can choose the payment type. How are they going to be paid for this open shift? And I can click Award. And I've now been awarded that open shift. You see this says now one awarded, still one spot open. And this says awarded here. And that will add me right to that shift using the overtime code that we set up initially, along with the payment type that we selected here. Okay, I'm going to pause here and unmute the mics. The mics are live for anybody who might have questions about either creating or updating or awarding open shifts.
Tom, we can have this run on the same type of list, right? Like set it up for a queue?
That portion is still available on the main program. It's not quite on the web at this point. So if you need to run your open shifts through the replacement policy, you'd still have to award those on the main program as of now.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
No problem. Any other open shift questions? I got something coming through on the chat here. Is there a way to award overtime with fairness so all employees have a chance to get a shift? Yeah, that's actually very similar to what Tom was just asking. On the main program, when we award open shifts, we have the ability to run the names of people who signed up through the replacement policy, which is our fairness list. So that way we can kind of sort them in the order of who should get them. That part of this is not currently on the web on this screen. But what I can do is, if we have some time at the end, I can cut over to the main program and show you how that looks on there, maybe just a brief demo. Okay. Any other open shift questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute the microphones again. And we'll move on to our next topic, which is going to be generating a call list from the web. Okay, so we can run replacement policy to generate a call list on the web. I know I just said that the replacement policy isn't available in award open shifts yet, but it is available in its original form to be able to create a call list and make phone calls to find someone to cover a shift. I have two options with how I'm going to get to that screen. I can either get it at the Supervisor menu, where we have overtime replacement policy, or I can get it by clicking somewhere on a shift, and I have it down here as well, run replacement policy. Either way, it's going to bring us to the same screen that we see here. Very similar to what you might be used to on the web, I'm sorry, on the main program, but just laid out a hair differently for the web. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with the date and shift that we need to fill a spot. So this one here is defaulting to the date and the shift that I clicked on, which in this case was today's date and squad 2. You can always change that from here if you needed to. Same thing with the date. Next thing we're going to choose is the reason. Why do we have to call someone in for overtime? So maybe it's a staffing shortage. And then we have our times. This is defaulting to the hours of the shift. But if the overtime that I'm going to offer isn't for the whole shift, that's fine. I can adjust my times right here. Below that, we have an option for the rules. We can either use the standard rules or the advanced rules. Standard rules are the ones that are similar to anybody who is familiar with the legacy version of PAS might recognize these. When we use standard rules, the employee who's running this, the supervisor, has to fill in some of this information. So, what type of person are we looking for? If we have a rule that says employee can't work more than a certain number of hours in a row, I would have to enter that in here. How many do we need? And which list do we want to use for this call? And then finally, they would pick how do we want to sort the list, by an overtime sort number, by seniority, by total overtime hours worked, things along those lines. And then they would hit Find Now. Using the standard rules, it puts a little more responsibility on the person who is running it. Number one, to fill those items out. Number two, because we have less rules that we apply here. The only thing that we're checking for is if the person is they can't be working during that that overtime. We also check to make sure they're part of the right group, and we check to make sure if you fill it out that they're not working more than X number of hours in a row. So it requires the supervisor to put that information in. It also may require the supervisor to evaluate the people that show up on their list. They might know that somebody called out sick this morning for their morning shift, so maybe we don't want to bother calling them for this afternoon shift or something along those lines. But it also generates a faster list because we are applying less rules to it. So here's our list that we got. We do have the option before we start making phone calls to send to PARS if you have the auto dialer. We also have an option to send to mobile, which will send text messages to the people on the list, and it will give them what we call an exclusivity period, where they can go in and sign up for this overtime if they want to take it. So it might go to the first person on the list. It might send Timothy an email saying that, or a text message saying that his exclusivity period is, let's say, it's 3:10 now, so his exclusivity period is maybe 3:20 to 3:25. And Annie's exclusivity period is 3:25 to 3:30. And Ralph's is 3:30 to 3:35, and so on. And then between those times, I can go in and I can click and say that I want that position. So it keeps the integrity of the list by only allowing a person to sign up for it if it's during their time or if their time has passed. So if Timothy's time ended at 3:25 and he went on at 3:28 and no one had taken it yet, he could still take it. That's the send to mobile option. The other option is just to use the contact information and begin making phone calls. We provide you with their contact info here. So I might call this person, and we have our buttons that are created for each department, by your department. You can set your buttons up however you need them to be. So the first person I call, they might say that they can't work it. This gives us an option or an opportunity to add some information to the log text if we want, or we can just have it say denied, and we can hit deny to keep going. Got the next person here. Maybe they're excused. Maybe in this case, I do want to put a log text in, something like that, excused. And then when I get to the next person here, maybe they say yes. So I would click accept. I'd ask them how they want to be paid. And then there's some other items here, all optional, that I could fill in. Do I want to give them a job assignment right now? Do I need to adjust their times at all? Do I need to enter a service number, reference number, order number? Do I want to put a reason text, or I want to add to the log text? But if I don't need any of these, all I have to do is enter the pay type and hit assign. That's going to put that person on the schedule. It also allows me to keep going through the list in case I needed a second person, or maybe that person agreed to take part of the shift, but I need to find somebody to take the other part. If I'm done, I'm free to move away from this screen. I could go back to the daily schedule if I wanted, and I'd see our person added to the schedule there. Okay, that's our standard rules. Our advanced rules work the same way. We go in the exact same way. We set up the top here, same way. Our date, our shift, our reason, and our hours. And then we can choose, instead of the standard rules, we can choose the advanced rules. And that's when we would choose from those replacement policy groups that we set up as an administrator. So now all the person making the calls has to do is choose the right set of rules. So maybe we want to run the sergeant overtime rules. And we can hit find now. The advanced rules tend to take a little bit longer than the standard rules because we tend to put more into those rules. We check for additional things that maybe the standard rules wouldn't check for. We also have the option, like you see here, to set a number of different options. So the first thing we're doing is running a rule set called overtime against the list called sergeant. Then we're going to run those same rules against patrol. And then maybe we have a new set of rules called forced overtime, and we're going to run that against that sergeant list again. And if you weren't on for our replacement policy session, we covered how we set all those rules up, and we can choose how we're sorting by a sort order, by seniority, by reverse seniority, all those types of options. That's all being accounted for in these rules. From that point, everything else is the same. I can send to PARS, I can send to mobile, or I can start making calls and using my buttons here. Okay, so that is how we would run the overtime replacement policy right here from the web. And our two options of either the standard rules or the advanced rules. We'll go ahead and pause here, unmute the mics, and mics are live for questions about replacement policy and running it from the web. Okay. Doesn't seem to be any questions on that. This is probably a good time for us to take a couple-minute break before we move on to our next couple of topics here. So I have probably about 3:18. So we'll want to just say maybe 3:30, just round it to that to get started again. When we come back from break, we'll cover substitutes, switches, and reciprocates. We'll cover job and schedule detail assignment, schedule actions, timesheets, signing timesheets, and reports. Okay? So again, we'll start back up at about 3:30. Okay, everybody. Looks like we're just about at 3:30. So we'll pick up again. Next thing we're going to take a look at is using substitutes, switches, and reciprocates. So when it comes to using these items, we have two options. Number one is I can go in to the daily schedule and I can put someone on a switch or substitution or reciprocate. Okay, so maybe the employees come to me or email me to let me know that they want to do a switch with each other. And I can click on the employee's name. And I can go to substitute, switch, reciprocate. And that gives me a couple of options here. Okay, I'll take a moment to explain the difference between these items. The first one, or let's start with switch. A switch is when two employees are going to work a shift for each other. One person's going to work, or one person was scheduled to work today, the other person was scheduled to work tomorrow, and they are going to switch with each other. They're going to cover each other's shifts. Now, a switch is not considered to be an official schedule change. And what that means is we don't report this information to payroll. The day still belongs to the person who was originally scheduled to work. Okay, we're not actually changing the schedule, we're just making a note on it that instead of employee A, employee B will be working that day. Okay, so if we're reporting hours worked to payroll, this may be a good choice for us because a switch might cause somebody to have too many hours in one pay period and not enough in another. So that's a switch. A substitute is like a switch in that it is not an official change to the schedule. That information doesn't report to payroll or anything. But this is more of an open-ended option, right? I'm going to work for you today, and then you'll pay me back sometime down the line. We'll work it out between the two of us when you're going to pay me back. Okay, and the option all the way at the right here, this is a substitute for time. So it's just like substitute where I'm going to work for you tomorrow, but instead of you working for me one day, you're just going to give me time out of one of your banks. It's probably the least used of all the options from what I've seen. The one that we skipped, reciprocate, this is an actual change to the schedule. So if we were reporting hours worked to payroll, or we were running a report on hours worked, this would reflect a change to the schedule. Your day now becomes my day now becomes your day. This could cause hours to be off in different pay periods if the switch takes place across two pay periods. Or I'm sorry, the reciprocate takes place across two pay periods. So those are some items to consider when you're figuring out what is the best option for your department. Okay. With that being said, there's differences behind the scenes on how they report, but they all pretty much work the same. I have the employee that I clicked on and the date and the shift, and then I would pick the employee that they were going to switch with, the date that they were working, and the shift that they were working. Let me go ahead and find a better example where I know I can get two people to switch. Let's go. So if I select myself here, and I do this, and I'm going to switch with let's see. I'm going to switch with Skip on the 3rd, the 4th. So I'm working on 2-2 on Squad 1. Skip is working on 2-4 on Squad 2. If I click Save, that's going to have us covering for each other. So Skip is working for me, and then on his day, it will say that I am working for Skip. If I've assigned someone to any of those items, a substitute, a switch, or reciprocate, I can click on one part of that, and I'll get an option to undo that item, undo the reciprocate. It'll ask, are you sure? And we'll go ahead and undo it. Again, all of those work in a similar fashion. Okay, so switch and reciprocate work the same way. Substitution is different because you don't have to put when the other person is paying them back. You just pick the person's name and you identify the hours that they are working for each other. It could be the whole shift, it could be a partial. That's entirely based on what their needs are. Okay, so that is how we would enter the switch or substitution or reciprocate for the employee. But we also have the option for switches and substitutions to allow the employee to request those items. So if you were part of the training earlier today, the user training, you would have seen this request switch screen. Where I can go in and I can submit a request for a switch or a request for a substitution. At this time, there's not an option for requesting a reciprocate. But if I'm using switch or substitute, and as a supervisor, I get a notification that there's a request for one of those, I come under the supervisor menu, and I go to change request switch status. Okay, I set a date range here, and I hit refresh, and this will look for any requests that are in the system. If I want to go in and process one, approve it or deny it, I find the item, I click the arrow here, and that will drop down with all the information about that switch. Okay, so you've got both of our names here, the dates that we were scheduled to work, and the shifts we were scheduled to work. Tells you the status, tells you who requested it, when they requested it, and in the notes here it also identifies what skill sets, what validation skills we have in common that let us do this switch. the system will not let you request a switch with someone who doesn't have a matching skill set. So if I was patrol and this person was just a dispatcher and didn't have a patrol skill there, then we wouldn't have been able to submit that switch. And down here we have our options. We can approve it, deny it, or delete the request altogether. If we approve or deny the switch, both parties of that switch get an email letting them know that that happened. Okay, so I'll go ahead and approve the switch. Switch request has been approved, and that will now display on the schedule the same way any other switch would. There you go. Okay, we'll pause there, unmute the mics. The mics are now live for any questions regarding substitutes, switches, or reciprocates. Okay, if there's no questions, we will proceed. I'll mute the microphones again. The next topic that we're going to look at on the web here is assigning employees to jobs and schedule details. Okay, in the supervisor zone, we have an option for update schedule details. And this is similar to a screen that we have on the web that lets us choose an employee's name, and we can view their schedule for a month at a time, and we can assign them to either jobs or any of the other schedule details that might be in the system by taking them from here we'll use we'll just use these up here. So by taking them from here and dragging them over to here. Okay, I can drag those items and drop them where they belong. I can then switch over. Let's say now I want to assign a car to someone. I can drag those over as well. I have an option here to view all details, which will show me everything that's been assigned so far. Or if I uncheck that, we're only going to see the type of items that we are dealing with currently. So you can use that to assign any items that you need to, and those things get reflected on our daily schedule. So you can see my job assignment and any details that I had been assigned. So that's how you can assign those items from the web. Some of the other schedule actions that we have, we can access them from the click menu. If I click on an employee's name, I have an option here for add comments. This is similar to what you might used to be seeing on the main program. So I get everybody from the shift. I can come over here and I can type the comment I want to enter in here. I can say, you know, or I can put something else on this one. And once I'm done there, I can click Save, and that will add those items to our schedule view. We can do the same thing with schedule times. We have a change schedule times option. We get to it by clicking on the schedule. And we can update the hours here as well. So any changes I might need to make, and then click Save. And those will get added to the schedule as well. So these are all things that you've been able to do in the main program, but are now available on the web. We can also move somebody. I can click on somebody's name, and if I want to move them to a different day or a different shift, I click Move Employee. So we've got the employee's name here, the date, the shift they're scheduled to work, and then where are we going to move them? What date and what shift? Maybe I just want to move them to yesterday's date. Okay, that'll move them from that day on the schedule to the day before. And the last schedule action is view entry. Again, this is something that has been in our software for some time on the main program, now available on the web. I can click on someone's name, and I have an option to view entry. And this gives me a little bit more information about the person and the item that I clicked on. So this person right here, we just have a regular work day for them. But if I click on somebody who has time off and view that entry, we have the work day, plus we have the day off entry. And with that, I can see things like the timestamps, when it was requested, when it was approved. I can do the same thing for overtime as well. Right, my timestamps, I can see what the payment type is if I needed to know that. So that is how we would view information about a certain entry. Okay. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to open up the mics. And mics are live for any questions about assigning employees to their jobs or other schedule details, or any of those schedule actions, adding comments, changing start and end times, moving an employee, or viewing an entry. Okay, I'll go ahead and mute the microphones again. Next thing we're going to look at is the option to sign employees' timesheets from the web. So if your department is going to have people sign timesheets, that's certainly an option that we have in the system. Signing timesheets is not a required part of payroll. It's entirely optional. It does not hold payroll up. You know, we can continue processing payroll without the signatures. But if you are looking to do that, on the web, under the timesheets and payroll section, there's an item that we looked at earlier today called Review Payroll, where someone can sign their own timesheet as the employee. Okay, that was during the employee section. We looked at the timesheet. The button is now available because I've changed the pay period, so we can now click Sign Timesheet, and I can put my timestamp on there as the employee. But we have another item here called Sign Timesheets Level 2, and that would be our supervisor level. So this screen looks a little bit different. I can go through here and I can select the people whose timesheets I want to put a signature on, or I can select all by clicking up here. And I have two options down at the bottom. I can go ahead and sign the timesheets, or if I want to view them beforehand, I can open that up, and I get kind of a little miniature view of an employee's timesheet. And I can use these arrows to scroll through and look at those timesheets. Okay, so once I'm done looking at them and I'm ready to put my signature on them, I can just come back up here and click Sign Timesheets. And that will put my signature on all of the employees that were listed there. May be a problem because my signature is not set in the system, but normally that would just go ahead and put the signature on there. Again, not a required part of payroll, but something that some departments still do. So the option is there to sign those as a supervisor from the web. Okay, and then the other section that we'll talk about here is reports. Probably the most basic web report is this one here, the Employee Statistical Report. This is a report that lets me see a lot of information about myself all in one place. So it lets me see things such as the balances in my banks, what time I've taken off, what overtime I have in the system, my administrative days log, which is the days or the time that's been added to or subtracted from my bank, my work trends, when I tend to work, when I tend to take off, when I tend to work overtime. Schools would be any training assignments that I've been given through the training module, the name of the school, the dates, any certifications. Extra duty would be any extra duty or outside jobs that I've been assigned to. Date, vendor, description, location, start and end time, number of hours. Court, if you were using our court alert module, would be any items that have been assigned to me through there. And finally, time sellback, if your department participates in any type of time sellback, whether it be throughout the year by the employee, or maybe like an end of year item that happens before the end of the year. those items would show there, the type of time that was sold back, the amount, the date, and who processed it. This is something we can give to the employee so they can view this for themselves. It's also something that a lot of times we give to supervisors with access to the people they supervise, because it does give me a very good kind of all-in-one view of the various things that are happening in the system with that employee. So that's been in the web for a while. You may have already seen that. We also have the ability to adjust the date range on that. So if you wanted to look back at the past or just at a certain time period, you can do so. We've added a number of other reports to the web, and these are all security-based, so they can be given to supervisors or not. A couple of examples, we have some of the rosters available now on the web. So if your department is using or printing up any of these rosters from the main program, they can see them here. You know, we have like the roll call roster. You can bring that up here. You choose your date and your shift. And we can see that, the name, the badge number, car, job assignment, start, end time, comments. We also have a master deployment roster. So a lot of the same information, just a little different. What shift I'm on that day, because you can have multiple shifts on this one. Job assignment, car assignment, employee, number, name, rank, status, if they're off. All these items can be either printed out in a PDF or exported to Excel. We have a job activity report if I wanted to run a report to see who worked what jobs when. I have my date range. I have my employees that I want to look at. And then I can identify what jobs do I want to run this for, just certain jobs, all jobs. And I can run that and see that I was on job A on these dates. Some time off reports, one for balances. If I wanted to run a balance of time off report for the people that I supervise, I can do that. I can select the number of people. Again, that's where groups may come in handy. And what types of time do I want to see the balances for? And I can search that. Some of these have some pie charts or bar graphs available as well. Okay, they can also be saved, as well as the report itself. Time off activity report, if I wanted to be able to see who had taken time off, what days, and so on. Okay, and what reasons? And then we have some other filters that are available sometimes, status, things like that. And you can get a report on that as well. And then up at the top here, I skipped over, we have an overtime activity report and an overtime valuation report. So these are all available from the web. They're things that maybe I was able to do on the main program. They're controlled by security, so you can choose who gets them and who doesn't. In addition to whether or not you can get into the reports, security also controls who you can run it for. So, you may only be able to run it for your own people, or maybe you can run it for everyone if you need to, whatever the needs are. Again, more filters where we can do things like payment type and filtering by CFS or reference number. Okay, and then valuation report, similar to the overtime activity report, except this one will deal with dollar amounts. That, of course, is dependent on you having the employee's salaries in the system. Otherwise, it'll just come up as $0. Okay, and then it's possible too to make some of the custom reports available on the web. If you're using any custom reports, that can be published as well. Beyond that, we have access to help and training, which links to our support site, which apparently is down for maintenance at the moment. But you can go there. That brings you right to the page where you can search for articles and videos on using different functions in the system. So if you're here using something and you have a question about it, you can go right there and search for that screen and see what kind of information is available. And of course, log out will log you out of the system. Okay, so we'll go ahead, we'll open up the mics. If anybody has any questions about those last couple of items that we looked at here, signing your timesheet as a supervisor from the web, any of the reporting features, or help and training. Okay, well, what I'll do now, I'll go back to the question that was asked before, a little bit off topic, but we do have the time, so we can certainly take a look at it, about how we can run the fairness rotation or the overtime replacement policy against open shifts to award them. That's done in the main program, which I will bring up over here. Okay, so if you have set up a replacement policy, or if you just want to use this, the basic one on your open shifts, you can come in here, you can go under the supervisor zone, and we have a sector for award open shifts. So we can set our date range here for the shifts that we're looking for. And hit refresh. And then we'll find them all listed here. Okay, I'm just going to scroll through real quick to see if I have any with multiple people signed up. Not necessarily. So I have this one here. This has one person signed up for it at the moment. And I can see their name here at the bottom. But if I had multiple people, of course, they would all be listed along the bottom here. So if I want to use replacement policy to help me sort this list and figure out who should be the first person to get the job, I can come over here in the bottom right and hit this Use Replacement Policy button. And I have the option to either use the standard rules, or I can use the advanced rules that we have set up. That might be the easiest way if you have the advanced rules already set up, because we already know that when we set up the rules here, and I'll just show you what that looks like. So when we set up the patrol group, for example, we've already told the system, that's a bad example, let's use Sergeant Overtime. Well, actually, no, that is an example. So the patrol group, we know that we've already set it up to use certain rules here. Okay, so we said the employee has to be part of the patrol group. They can't be working during the assignment. So any of these rules might filter some people out of that list and make them ineligible. And then we also identified how do we want to sort that list. So maybe we're using just the regular sort order and we're doing it on a rotation. So we can take the list, we can sort it by this sort order. All this information is already there for the system to run. So if we go back and we run this against the patrol rules, we hit run policy, and that'll take a few seconds or a minute or two to run those rules against the list of people who are eligible to work. Now, what could happen is you could have some people that signed up, but they may not be eligible to work any longer, like you see right there, because there might be some rules that they didn't apply to. Maybe we had a rule in there that said that they can't work more than 16 hours without an 8-hour break. And maybe this would make them violate that rule, so it pulls them off the list. Or maybe we said that they can't, what's another one? They can't have had sick time that day or sick time in the past 24 hours. So that might pull them off the list. But what it'll also do is it'll resort the people who are still eligible. So that way we put the number one person, the person who should get it, up at the top of the list. And we sort them down from there, so if you had to have multiple people awarded, you could. From there, you would select the person you wanted to give it to, and you would select the pay for that, and then you would hit award. And that would create the overtime entry for them, and that will also update that sort order. That'll now move them to the bottom of the list. So you can use this OpenShift in conjunction with that rotating list. You just have to do it from the main program.
Okay, Rob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. So once you award that, though, that goes right into the schedule, I would assume.
Yes, exactly.
So wherever that overtime is that you just awarded them, well, that puts them into that slot on the schedule.
Yes. So if I go here, and I'm not going to run the list this time because this person isn't eligible because of some rule on the list. But if I just click them and I hit, cash time and a half and award, then if we go to 110 and we look at our traffic safety unit, 110, and do I have a view with that on it? Let's see. Here, I'll just edit it here real quick. Maybe. No, we don't have it here. So I'll just add it to the end here. Let's go and do this. So that person gets put right on the schedule in an overtime entry, and it uses whatever overtime reason we entered when we set up that OpenShift.
Okay.
So in this case here, it was, where did it go? Oh, other. So it was the reason was called other. So that's what I put it on there. So yes, that can interact with that that replacement policy.
All right, that's good.
Okay.
That's what I need.
I don't. Yeah, it just has to be done from the main program. It may eventually make its way, that feature on that screen, to the web, but for now it's just a main program item.
Okay.
Okay.
You got it.
Very good. Any other questions from anybody? Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, that covers everything that we are going to look at for this afternoon's supervisor training. If you're interested, we're going to be having some open forum Q&A type sessions tomorrow morning and afternoon. Those invitations will probably be going out shortly. If you have any outstanding questions or anything that wasn't covered that you would like to have a chance to ask, you can certainly feel free to join those sessions tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone. I will leave this session open for another few minutes. If anybody thinks of anything, any questions, I'll be monitoring this. If not, I'll just go ahead and close it out. And thank you for your time, everybody.